I'll never forget my first time playing Dayz some 10 years ago, back when it was just a mod for Arma 2. It was a buggy mess. Like, if you guys think you have it bad now, within the first probably 2 minutes of playing that game, I managed to get in the way of a door as I was entering a house. Like, I just kind of opened the door and it hit me, and somehow that broke my fucking legs. So I was forced to crawl around, because again, back then, first time playing the game, I really thought, like, if you died, that was it. Like, there's no respawns, it's just game over, you're not allowed to play anymore. So I'm crawling around for probably a good 45 minutes, because once again, I hate to sound like back in my day, but back then, you couldn't craft a splint, nor would legs mend on their own. You had to find morphine at a hospital. So I crawl all the way to the next town, and just as the hospital is within view, a zombie sees me squirming around on the floor and runs up and ends my ass. And for some reason, I fell in love with the game. I had never experienced something so unforgiving. Fortunately, I was able to respawn and try again, and I probably died 20 more times, but each time I would make it a little further and survive a little bit longer. At this point, you could probably call me a masochist, but there was something so satisfying about trying to master the harsh lands of Trinaris, if only to perish once more to some new danger. It took me a while to realize, but that was kind of the point. You're supposed to die. It's a survival game after all. Your only real objective is to avoid death for as long as possible. Dayz is your story, but every story must have an ending. The key to it all is making it a story worth telling. And that's why I've compiled this comprehensive guide of everything I've learned over the last 10 years. So you've just spawned in and you're ready to run to Northwest Airfield, right? Well, first we've got to take care of some basic needs. At the bottom right of your screen, you may have noticed these status icons. This tells you everything you need to know about how fucked you are. Indicated by a simple color change, it's really pretty self-explanatory. It's important to note these hunger and thirst icons should be viewed as a starvation meter rather than how hungry or thirsty you really are. By the time you reach yellow, you're already severely dehydrated and malnourished, making you more susceptible to diseases like the common cold. You may eat a bit of food and your meter returns to white, so you think you're all good, and then that pesky yellow icon pops up just moments later, making it seem like your character has a voracious appetite. In reality, that first white notch on the bar is only about 20% of your maximum food intake. There is a massive ceiling above that threshold if you are able to find enough food to fill your stomach, which we'll get to a little bit later on. Should either or both of these icons hit red, you will begin to lose health, so it's important to try and prioritize food as soon as these become yellow. Things like sprinting and shivering will deplete these even faster, so it may be necessary to seek shelter and keep warm to stretch your food a little bit further. Which brings us right into this next icon, your character's temperature. This stat is often overlooked, but ignoring it could have severe consequences. As we just said, you will burn through food much faster when cold, as well as being more susceptible to annoying fits of sneezing and coughing. When this icon becomes dark blue, your character is hypothermic and will begin to lose health slowly, which again is often a player's least worry when there's so many other dangers present, but when compounded with 2, even 3 other statuses sapping your health, this can quickly become a death sentence. Moving on, this curious little numbered thing in the middle of your screen is your quick bar. The quick bar is your best friend in this game. Seriously, it took me embarrassingly long to figure out what this does and how to use it. This ain't a gentleman's game. No one's gonna wait for you to rummage through your pockets for your weapon like some kind of classical duel. You can assign important items to this quick bar by dragging them from your inventory so they can be accessed quickly by pressing the associated number key. How you set this bar up is entirely dependent on personal preference, but I would recommend picking a format and sticking to it rather than just randomly assigning items. Having a standardized way of doing it means you won't have to scramble to select the correct item in a stressful situation where a split second could be the difference between life or death. The last thing on our HUD here is our stamina bar. This tells us how long we can sprint for and is affected by the total weight of your inventory. It's a pretty standard video game mechanic. However, it's worth noting certain actions require a minimum amount of stamina, like vaulting over high walls, so it's a good idea to try and travel light when possible, as this can hinder your ability to flee or force you into exposed and dangerous points of entry around certain compounds. It may be tempting to hoard everything you can find, just in case it may become useful later on, but being slow will more often likely just get you killed. Right, so we know that starvation and dehydration will kill you, but how do I prevent it? Fortunately, the devs, in their divine benevolence, provided us with some starting mechanics to find food and drink easily, if you know where to look. Food and drink can be found in houses and residential locations, but oftentimes these spawn towns are picked clean by other survivors. One of the most lucrative means of procuring food is by foraging the ground around certain fruit-bearing trees. These trees are pretty easy to recognize, and opening your inventory beneath their branches will reveal a bountiful harvest of a few meager bites of food. But it's better than nothing, and will at least provide you with enough energy to hopefully reach the next town. Just be sure not to eat the rotten fruit. Also, oddly enough, these fruit orchards tend to not spawn any fruits. It's usually just these single fruit trees found in people's backyards, so don't waste your time here, that's just my personal experience. Another great way to acquire food early on is by killing zombies. Though a bit dangerous, this method can provide you with a substantial amount of food and other useful gear. If you're going to fight zombies, especially as a fresh spawn, it's recommended you try to lure zombies away from a larger group. Getting mauled to death by a horde of zombies sounds rather counterintuitive to your survival. Another often overlooked potential spawn are these boats washed up on shore, where you'll find cans of soda and sometimes snacks. Again, I'm pretty sure this is by design to help give fresh spawns an extra edge when it comes to survival. Clean water can be found at water pumps, usually located in the town center. Do not drink from ponds, streams, or water bottles you found on the ground, as these will almost certainly give you cholera, which is an absolute nightmare. Water from these sources can be purified using chlorine tablets, usually found in hunting locations. While looting is undoubtedly a major part of the game, stealing from the homes of the presumably dead residents isn't the only way to get by. For the resourceful survivor, the land can provide just about everything you need to thrive. You can harvest your own food from the environment through farming, hunting, trapping, or fishing. Dayz has a robust crafting system, so I'm not going to go into each and every one of these methods, but one of the easiest means of procuring food is with a hook and a rod. These are commonly found in those same boats we mentioned earlier or in shipping containers near ports. A makeshift fishing rod can also be crafted using just a long stick and some rope, and a hook can be fashioned from bone using a sharp tool like a knife. A rather unsavory pro tip, both of these things can be harvested from those less fortunate survivors. Look, you gotta do what you gotta do out here. You'll need bait as well, found by interacting with the ground with a knife in your hand. Simply bait the hook, attach it to your rod, find a body of water, and hold down the action wheel until you've caught something. The fish will then have to be prepared before cooking. It seems a rather long-winded process, but the materials are rather easy to come by as soon as you spawn, and it definitely beats searching ransacked houses and coming up empty-handed. Dayz is a massive open-world environment with much to explore. While this adds a ton of depth and substance to the game, it also makes it a challenge to navigate. There's loads of in-game resources like maps, road signs, a compass, and now even a GPS to help you, but for new players I strongly recommend using a third-party map like iSurvive. I'm all about becoming immersed in this hardcore survival experience, but there's really nothing fun about getting lost and starving before you reach the next town. At this point I know Trinaris better than my own hometown, but this took literally thousands of hours. iSurvive will cut down on this time exponentially and will help you identify where to find useful loot. I'm not going to tell you where to go or how to get there. Discovery is part of the fun of this game. But it's worth mentioning that higher tier loot can be found the further from spawn you travel, so if you're not finding what you're looking for, try heading inland. Apart from the normal loot spawns, there are also dynamic and contaminated zones, where you'll find some of the best loot in the game. Most of the top tier weapons are exclusive to these areas and require a bit of luck and skill to obtain. Dynamic heli crashes often require you to be in the right place at the right time. You'll hear the sound of a helicopter falling from the sky and crashing, or you may see the smoke billowing out of a wreck from a distance. These locations aren't exactly as random as the name implies. You can find a list of all heli crash coordinates on the iSurvive map. However, these are only potential spawn locations, as there is a maximum of only 2 crashes per server at any given time. Finding those 2 spawns out of dozens of locations is no easy task. They also tend to attract quite a bit of players, so be ready for a fight if you plan on heli hunting. Contaminated zones are the god tier of all loot in Dayz, but are also the most difficult to access. Doing so requires you to have collected all pieces of the NBC suit, as well as a gas mask with filters. Even then, you'll have to contend with hordes of zombies, limited air supply, and potentially high-geared players, all while experiencing reduced stamina and visibility from your protective equipment. Many players still brave the danger, as it is the only place you'll find the M4 and AKM, some of the best assault rifles in the game, and also stand as sort of a status symbol amongst Dayz players. By now, you can probably tell there's no shortage of ways to die in Dayz, including a number of nasty infections, each with their own symptoms and disease progression, which we'll cover here. Often the best treatment is prevention, practicing good hygiene and using common sense. Keep your immune system strong by making sure you're healthy and well nourished. Multivitamins are also an excellent way to boost your immune system to prevent or fight off disease. One of the most common afflictions for new players is foodborne illness. As we mentioned earlier, stay away from unclean water sources. Cholera can be particularly nasty as you vomit up everything you eat or drink, draining your stamina and health further. You can treat cholera with tetracycline, but you'll still experience symptoms until the medication takes effect, so it's important to only eat small bits of food to avoid vomiting. Cholera can be beaten without medication, but it is very difficult as you struggle to keep your immune system healthy. You'll be forced to consume things in small increments. I usually eat for 2 seconds, wait 2 seconds, and repeat. But again, this can be a painstaking process, and you'll mostly be confined to staying put until you're healthy again. You should also avoid eating with bloody hands, wash them or wear gloves, as this is another way to contract cholera. Another common one is wound infection, which is contracted from using bandages or rags that haven't been disinfected or leaving wounds untreated. This disease comes in 2 stages, and if caught early is fairly easy to treat. You'll first notice the disease symbol on your status bar, and your character will begin to make a grunting noise. This means your wound has become infected and can be treated by disinfecting the area with iodine, alcohol, or disinfectant spray. If left to progress, it will become the much more deadly septicemia or blood infection. The bacteria from your wound has now worked its way into your bloodstream, and you'll start losing health and experiencing symptoms like fever and blurred vision. At this stage, you'll need both disinfectant and tetracycline to treat it. The last one we'll talk about is the common cold. As the name suggests, it's probably the most common disease you'll experience. All it takes is a weakened immune system from malnourishment, low health, or exposure to the elements. Fortunately, it's also the most benign disease, really just more of a nuisance than anything, as coughing gives away your position, and your screen will periodically blur from fever and headache. You can kick your cold by keeping yourself generally healthy for a while, or use vitamins or tetra to speed up recovery. This disease is also commonly transmitted between survivors, so if someone in your party is sick, it's a good idea to practice social distancing. This is the part where I should probably tell you not to trust anyone in Dayz, but the truth is I've met some really cool people. Those are some of the most memorable playthroughs, going on random adventures with some guy you just met. There are, however, some do's and don'ts when approaching people in Dayz. Number 1, if you're already geared to the nines, it's probably too late for you to make new friends. Anyone that sees you is going to shoot on sight or feign being your buddy and betray you at the first chance they get, because they probably want that M4 on your back. Likewise, it's probably not best to approach the guy with an M4. Even as a harmless freshie, it's probably not going to be well met. The best time to make friends is early on, when both of you have little to lose and there's mutual gain to be had. It takes a bit of practice to feel out players' intentions, but there are a few things you could do to gauge whether or not they're friendly. One test I use to see if someone's willing to team up is to ask for a small favor, spare a bit of food or something. If they don't have anything to give, offer to work together to find food. Maybe you have a useful tool or a rifle to hunt with. Pool your resources and increase your chances of survival, but don't be too pushy. Oftentimes people already have a group and they just want to find their friends, but at least you can both go your separate ways peacefully. Which brings me to my last tip. Use your words before resorting to violence. Lots of conflicts can be resolved both in real life and in game by simply talking matters out. Announce yourself when you see someone instead of creeping around looking sketchy. They'll be a lot less likely to shoot you. Don't be an NPC. Talk to other survivors. Even if shots have already been fired and diplomacy has failed, a simple "what the fuck, man" or "sorry" can usually de-escalate the situation in some cases. A lot of times people react in fear. Let them know you mean no harm and you might both walk away with your lives. PvP is only so satisfying. The real gem in this game is the people you meet and the endless possibilities for interaction. Matter of fact, we're not even going to dive into PvP in this guide. There's just too much to cover, but I may do so in a later video. And with that, we'll conclude today's survival guide. If you have any questions or requests, go ahead and drop them in the comments, and I'll do my best to respond. Before we say goodbye, I'm just going to shamelessly plug my weekly live stream. I'm still trying to lock down a regular schedule, but it's usually Saturday or Sunday mornings, starting at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Stop in, grab your coffee or tea, and hang for a bit. The vibes are chill, and let's be honest, you're not doing anything better at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. It's fine. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. For more updates and announcements, check my community tab or follow me on Twitter. Okay, bye-bye.